And then so moving on as well, we know Arthur from Defiance, the whole thesis of Defiance is actually being activist investors, right, in DeFi. So I'm sure there's a lot to share, and yourself as well, even before starting Defiance, we understand you have been an active community member. So really looking forward to your sharing, Arthur.
Sure. Actually, right now, I don't really use the term activist anymore because I think that the connotations have certain element of like the negative aspect to it due to the way it's being used in the traditional finance. So I usually just use the term active participations. I think governance is actually a very broad topic, and I don't think we have really solved it yet. So I think just want to quickly talk about like my experience with the governance at early days at Synthetix. Um, I think that point of time, although the process wasn't formalized, but due to the alignment of the community toward the same objective, it works very well just by using a Discord voting. And I mean, it's not binding, and you do not even know whether that the address is that the user is actually behind a certain token holder as well. But you kind of know whether these people, how committed they are to the protocol based on their interaction with the community in the Discord channel. So I think that that worked very well, and the protocol also gradually improved along the way to the level that the vote is tied in with the token holder, and right now it's evolved to a council base where, because Synthetix is a fairly complicated protocol, so most of the people, even for myself, I probably would not know as much compared to some of the community members that are like using the product on a daily basis and interacting with the product very frequently. So I think that model, I think right now is indeed the most optimal for Synthetix, and I think that despite all the ideal thinking about like DAO is gonna solve a lot of the governance issue, I think that we look at the real world, like a direct one-to-one participation democracy doesn't work that well simply because of information asymmetry. Most people are just too busy to are fully informed about what they are voting for. So I think that a combination of council-based governance or delegation is definitely the way to go. And I think Synthetix has been doing quite well in that regards. And in terms of which one I would say is more sustainable, I think it's definitely back to this. I think that you really need to have a group of community members that is very knowledgeable about the protocol, and these community members will slowly evolve to be the kind of like the community leader of this protocol. And as a result of this, they will gain more trust, and likely that they will garner a lot more votes to help to govern the protocol. I think that has been the case, and voter apathy is real in everywhere. Like when you look at politics, voting for the general elections, or even down to the listed company, the shareholder votings, it's always been fairly low because when your ownership is below a certain threshold, it actually, from a economic point of view, it doesn't make sense for you to invest so much time and effort to come up with informed decision. So I think that I think to reinforce what Anjan have mentioned, a delegation or a council-based governance approach, I would say in the long run is a lot more sustainable. But I think it's also very important to cultivate a larger group of community members informed about the protocol, so that you do have other people that can step up in case some of the core community member that decided that there's other thing that you like to focus on, you cannot spend as much time on this anymore. So I think that the larger DeFi protocol generally has done well, and there's a continuous new group of community member that participate in governance. But I think for the younger one, they still need to take some time to grow their informed community member base, so that it's not too reliant on a certain member. And I think that in terms of experience from the initial discussion in the governance channel or forums, I think so far that has been working well. But I think that a lot of time, I think right now the most common one is almost all the protocol have their own governance forum, and most of it have a process already. Like you want to, like Aave have a request for comment, and after that, you will get pushed to the AIP if it getting sufficient support. I think the key thing to highlight is to amplify the decision making. I found that some of the protocol, the discussion wasn't well highlighted in the community member. So as a result, sometimes it can be fairly rushed. Like within a week, it went from like a proposal stage to voting station. Actually, a lot of the community member is still not very informed of what is this about, and some might not even know it exists. So we actually encounter this experience. So I think that there is a fairly important to make sure that the community member know that this governance proposal exists and what is it about, so that the discussion permeates into as much people as possible. I think beside that, I think that a lot of the process right now are fairly established. And I think that it's been working quite well, especially from our participation in Aave, Synthetix, and SushiSwap. Yeah, I think that most of them are like having a pretty good process so far. And I think that in terms of any protocol that stand out, I think Aave have stand out pretty well. I think most of the proposals that have been pushed to the voting stage have all passed. I don't see any votes that have failed so far. And yeah, I think that's the mostly it. I also want to highlight another part that when an investor like us trying to put out a proposal, usually how we get a community support. I think it's very important that you need to think from the community member point of view as well, because if the perceived perception is, this is only just the proposal to enrich the large token holder, even though you have the sufficient vote to brute force vote pass, it's likely not going to end well. So it's usually very important to find a way that to make sure the entire community member is aligned, so that you can also get them to support and participate in the voting as well. And I think that this also comes back to the way of dealing with voter apathy. I think that you also need to give the smaller token holder a sense of participation, and their vote matters. So I think in the early days and I think there's a lot of work being done on this regard. I think that especially Vitalik is a very big proponent of quadratic voting. And I think that the Synthetix governance process, when it comes to voting for the council delegate, did introduce some of the quadratic voting, so that the top token holder does not have a one-to-one weight to their vote to choose the delegate for the protocol. I think that this is quite important. I think that, and unfortunately, I think that this is something that is quite lacking. I think most DeFi protocols are still going for one coin, one vote, because I think there are some challenges in implementing quadratic voting, because there is possibility of civil attack, like people creating multiple addresses to increase their influence despite not holding as much token. And they also saw like another argument that the bigger token holder, since they have more at stake, they will want to act in the best interest of the protocol anyway. So one coin, one vote might not necessarily be a bad thing. But I would say that generally to deal with voter apathies and low level of engagement, it's very important to let the smaller token holder feel that their participation matters, and it's not like that the bigger token holder is the one deciding everything. Yeah. So I think that has been our experience so far. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Arthur. And anyone, please jump in with your questions. I'd love to just dive a bit deeper into the idea of quadratic voting, because I think everyone has kind of mentioned this, right? Like you mentioned the Sybil attack risk. Have you seen it kind of play out? Are there any examples to learn from in that case? Or, is it just not worth the trouble for proposals and yet?
I think we haven't seen it play out because there's just not that many protocol that implemented quadratic voting. Gitcoin is the only one that have the quadratic voting for their funding rounds. And I think that it has not been a major issue because I think that the effort is quite significant. And I think the value at stake is not big enough to trigger a very big civil attack yet. But I'm sure that if a DeFi protocol come to a stage where there's like a multi-million dollar worth of value at stake, such as for example, Aave is voting for the AIP to add new assets. Let's say there's a quadratic voting. There might be some very obscure illiquid asset they might want to be added, and they might civil attack this, because by being added to Aave protocol, they enable them they increase the utility significantly, and also get a lot of recognition as well. So I think that with the value of the decision at stake increase, we are likely going to see this happening. But so far, it has not happened yet.
Yeah, I guess that's also why the guardrails of like the Guardian Council for like Aave, and maybe some sort of veto rights by some sort of council may make sense, right, to counter this.